Chapter 1. There is a quiet story many of us start telling ourselves somewhere after 30. It sounds like this. This is just who I am. This is my career now. This is the kind of person I attract. This is how my body is. This is what I am capable of. On the surface, it can feel mature and reasonable. We have made some choices, we have survived some storms, and now we are supposed to know our path, know our role, know our limits. But beneath that story, another feeling often lives. A subtle tightness, a sense of being slightly too small for our own lives, like we are wearing clothing that once fit but has started to pinch at the seams. Buddhist teachings begin in a very different place from this story of being finished. They begin with the simple observation that everything is changing all the time. Our bodies, our thoughts, our relationships, our values, our understanding. Nothing is solid and final, not even the person we call me. The Buddha compared human life to a river. At any moment, it looks like a thing. We give it a name as if it were an object. But what we are actually seeing is movement, water flowing and changing, never the same twice. To step into a river is to step into new water every time, even if the river has the same name. Our lives after 30 are like that river. They may have one name, one job title, one relationship status, but inside there is always movement. New causes, new conditions, new insights arriving each day, whether we notice or not. The belief that there is nothing left to learn is not just inaccurate, it is painful. It cuts us off from the living river of our own experience. Imagine someone standing at the edge of a vast ocean, holding a single small cup of water. They look down at the cup and say, "I have tasted water. I know all there is to know about the sea." From a Buddhist perspective, this is what happens when we decide, by a certain age, that we already know who we are and what life is. We confuse the cup with the ocean. We confuse our current story with reality itself. There is a different way to live. In Zen Buddhism, there is a phrase that points directly at this different way. It is often translated as beginner's mind. Beginner's mind does not mean pretending to be ignorant or erasing what you have learned. It means meeting this moment as if it were the first time. It means allowing the possibility that something new is here, even in what seems totally familiar. Think of the first time you traveled alone to a new place, or the first time you fell in love, or the first time you tried a food you had never seen before. The senses were awake. You were not on autopilot. Your attention was fresh and wide. Beginner's mind is that same quality of attention brought into ordinary life after the thrill of first times has faded. It is the willingness to ask simple questions again. Who am I now? What matters to me now? What is this person in front of me actually saying? What is my body telling me today? What is life asking of me at this stage? When we lose beginner's mind, we do not just stop learning skills or information. We stop learning ourselves. We say things like, "I am bad at relationships. I am not creative. I am too old to change careers. I am not the kind of person who meditates or exercises or travels alone." These sentences harden around us like a shell. At first, the shell can feel protective. It gives us an identity. It saves us from risk. It explains our disappointments. But a shell that never cracks also never lets anything grow. Buddhism invites us to see that who we are is not a fixed object. It is a continuous process of becoming, shaped by our actions, our thoughts, our environment, and our willingness to see clearly. The belief that life should be settled by 30 is, in itself, a kind of attachment. We are attached to a script. The script might say, finish school by this age, find a partner by that age, reach a certain income, own certain things, behave in certain ways. There is nothing wrong with having hopes or plans. The suffering comes when we cling to the script more tightly than we listen to reality. Sometimes reality whispers, this career is slowly draining you. This identity no longer fits. This friendship has turned into a performance. This way of living is too small for you now. If we are convinced we are finished products, we cannot hear these whispers. Or we hear them and quickly explain them away. I am just ungrateful. It is too late to change. Other people would be happy to have what I have. Beginner's mind does not demand that we tear up our lives. It simply asks that we stop assuming we already know the ending. In practice, this can be very gentle. It might look like asking, at the end of a familiar day, what surprised me today? It might look like noticing one belief about yourself and quietly questioning it. Is it absolutely true that I am not creative? Is it absolutely true that I cannot learn new things? Who taught me that? Do I need to keep believing it? It might look like listening more carefully the next time your body says no, or your heart feels heavy in a place that looks fine on the outside. Over time, this simple curiosity loosens the grip of the old script. You begin to see small spaces where something else might be possible. You may notice new interests quietly emerging, like small shoots in a forest after a fire. You may feel the urge to step back from certain roles or demands, even if they once felt natural. You may discover that what you thought was indifference or boredom is actually grief for the self you stopped believing you could be. In Buddhist practice, every breath is considered a chance to begin again. Not metaphorically, but actually. With each exhale, the past is gone. With each inhale, a new moment is given. You do not have to wait for a new decade, a new year, or a crisis to start over in some small way. You only have to be willing to see that you are not finished, and that life is not finished with you. This willingness is the foundation for every other kind of letting go in this book. Without it, we will cling to relationships that hurt us, habits that numb us, and stories of ourselves that keep us cramped and afraid. With it, we can start to ask harder questions. If I am not a finished product, what and who am I still allowed to release? What kinds of relationships truly belong in the next chapter of my life? Where might space be waiting to open if I dare to put something down? In the next chapter, we will step directly into one of the most tender areas where this openness is needed: the people we allow to stand close to us. Chapter 2. Let go of toxic relationships without carrying guilt. By the time we pass 30, most of us can look back and see that our lives are woven from the people we have walked beside. Some have steadied us, some have challenged us, and some have quietly or loudly worn us down. The older we get, the more obvious it becomes that who we keep close shapes how we think, how we feel, and even how we understand ourselves. And yet, many of us stay in relationships that hurt us long after we know they are not good for us. Not because we are foolish, because we are afraid, and because we feel guilty. In the first chapter, we open to the possibility that we are not finished products, that life can still unfold in unexpected ways. That same openness is needed now, but at a more intimate level. We need the courage to reconsider which relationships belong in the next chapter of our life and which ones do not. In Buddhist teachings, compassion is central. But compassion is often misunderstood. We confuse it with self-sacrifice. We think that to be kind, to be spiritual, to be loving, we must endure anything. We tell ourselves that staying patient with cruelty, manipulation, or constant disrespect is a kind of moral virtue. It is not. The Buddha used a simple image. Imagine you are walking through a forest carrying a fragile lamp. That lamp is your heart and mind. Some people walk beside you carefully, sheltering the flame when the wind rises. Others keep bumping into you, shaking the lamp, or even trying to knock it from your hands. Compassion does not mean you continue walking shoulder to shoulder with the person who keeps trying to extinguish your light. It means you recognize that both of you suffer when the light goes out. From a Buddhist view, compassion has two wings. One wing is care for others. The other is care for yourself. When one wing is overdeveloped and the other is ignored, you cannot fly. You just keep turning in circles. Many of us enter our 30s with a heavy habit of people-pleasing. We apologize for having needs. We shrink to avoid conflict. We stay loyal to people who are not loyal to our well-being. We play the role of healer, rescuer, or endlessly patient listener, hoping that if we give enough, the relationship will finally feel balanced. It rarely does. To let go of toxic relationships, we first need to see them clearly. Not with hatred, not with drama, just with honest attention. Notice the patterns. After spending time with this person, do you consistently feel smaller, anxious, guilty, or drained? Are your needs dismissed or turned against you? Is affection used as a reward for compliance? Is confusion your usual state around them, as if you are always defending or explaining yourself? A relationship does not have to be explosive to be toxic. Sometimes it is a slow erosion of self-respect. Buddhism invites us to look beneath the surface of any pattern and ask, what are the forces holding this in place? Often, two powerful forces keep us in unhealthy dynamics: attachment and fear. Attachment whispers, "Without this person, I will be alone. No one else will understand me. I cannot imagine my life without them." Fear echoes, "If I leave, I will be the bad one. Ungrateful, disloyal, selfish." We cling to a painful present because the unknown feels even scarier. But attachment is not love. Attachment says, "I cannot be okay without you." Love says, "I wish you well, but I will not abandon myself for you." There is a common question listeners may quietly ask here. Is it unspiritual to walk away? Am I betraying my values if I end a relationship? The Buddha was very clear about causes and conditions. When certain conditions are present, suffering increases. When conditions change, suffering lessens. If a relationship continually feeds resentment, anxiety, or self-hatred, then remaining in it unchanged is not noble. It is simply continuing a set of causes that lead to more pain for everyone involved. Letting go is not an act of violence. It is an act of honesty. This does not mean we cut people off at the first sign of difficulty. All relationships involve conflict, misunderstanding, and growth. The question is not, is this hard? The question is there mutual willingness to listen, to repair, to change? When that willingness is absent over time, your effort alone cannot carry both of you. The practical side of letting go often begins with boundaries, not with a dramatic exit. In Buddhist language, a boundary is simply a clear recognition of what supports wise action and what does not. A boundary might be limiting how often you see someone, or stepping back from certain topics, or saying no to requests that leave you depleted. You may gently but firmly express, "I care about you, and I also need to take care of myself. I cannot keep having this same conversation. I cannot be spoken to in this way." Sometimes you will discover that with boundaries, the relationship can shift into something healthier. Other times, the boundary reveals that the only stable path is distance or separation. And this is where guilt often rushes in. We imagine the other person alone, angry, telling stories about how cold or uncaring we are. We imagine ourselves on the witness stand, endlessly justifying our choice. The mind writes long speeches in self-defense. Buddhist practice offers a simpler approach. You are responsible for the sincerity of your heart and the clarity of your actions. You are not responsible for how others interpret your choice to protect your well-being. One helpful reflection is this: if I continue as things are, what am I teaching this person about how to treat me? And what am I teaching myself? Staying in toxic patterns out of guilt teaches both people that harm is acceptable. Stepping away, even with trembling legs, teaches something different. It says, "My life is also precious. My peace also matters." Letting go without hatred is a practice. You can end a relationship and still wish the other well. You can step back and, in quiet moments, send them a simple intention. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May we both find our way. This is not sentimental. It is a way of not hardening your own heart. It keeps you from turning pain into bitterness. When you walk away, you do not need to declare the other person a villain. You simply recognize that the conditions between you no longer support the person you are becoming. You bless what was good. You learn from what was painful. And you allow space for new, healthier connections to arise. In time, that freed space becomes very practical. You may notice you suddenly have evenings without drama-filled phone calls, mornings without dread, mental energy that is no longer spent replaying arguments. What will you do with that space? That is where we are headed next. For now, remember this Buddhist truth. Letting go of a toxic relationship is not a failure of compassion. It is compassion finally including you. In the next chapter, we will turn that same compassionate clarity toward another heavy weight many of us carry without question: the clutter that fills our homes, our schedules, and our minds. Chapter 3. Let go of clutter in body, heart, and mind. By now, you have begun to loosen your grip on old certainties and heavy relationships. You have seen that it is possible to step away from what no longer serves you without becoming cold or unkind. This chapter widens that same gesture of release into every corner of your life. In Buddhism, a simple life is not a life of deprivation. It is a life where there is enough. Enough possessions to support you, enough activity to sustain you, enough stimulation to keep you awake, but not so much that you lose yourself in the noise. The Buddha compared the mind to a clear pool of water. When the water is still, you can see to the bottom. When it is stirred up with mud and debris, you cannot even see your own reflection. Clutter is that debris. It collects slowly and almost politely. A drawer here, an extra commitment there, an old resentment kept for just a little longer. Then one day, you look up and realize your space, your time, and your inner world are crowded. Let us begin with what you can touch. Physical clutter is often the most obvious, yet the easiest to excuse. The extra clothes you might wear someday, the books you intend to read, the kitchen drawer of things that will surely be useful, though they rarely are. There is an old story of a monk who visited a wealthy householder. The host was proud of his home and led the monk through room after room, filled with ornaments, furniture, and collections. Finally, the monk asked, "How many of these things were you using when you slept last night?" The householder laughed and said, "None of them. I was only using the bed." The monk nodded. "When we are not careful," he said, "we spend our whole life serving things that cannot even accompany us into sleep." This is not an argument for bare rooms and empty shelves. It is an invitation to notice what you are serving. Every object in your home makes a small demand on your attention. It must be cleaned, moved, stored, remembered. Together, those tiny demands form a background hum that you may no longer hear, but your nervous system does. Walk through your space as if you were a guest visiting for the first time. Do this with gentle curiosity, not self-judgment. What do you actually use? What quietly brings you joy? What simply sits and takes up air, space, and care? You might choose one small area, a single shelf or a table. Place your hand on each item and ask, "Is this supporting the life I am living now? Or is it a relic of a life I have already left?" Each object you release is not just an empty spot on a shelf. It is a small return of energy to you. The same is true of your time. Your schedule can become as cluttered as your closet. After 30, it is common to feel pulled in many directions. Work, family, friendships, obligations you said yes to before fully understanding their cost. In Buddhist language, each yes is a karmic seed. It sets something in motion. Some seeds grow into nourishing trees. Others sprout into tangled vines that wrap around your days. Look at your week as if it were a physical room. Where is there breathing space? Where does everything feel piled on top of everything else? Which commitments arise from genuine care, and which are driven by fear of disappointing others, or by an old image of who you think you should be? Again, this is not about withdrawing from life, but about choosing a life you can truly inhabit. When you let go of a weekly obligation that leaves you drained and resentful, you are not becoming selfish. You are freeing time that can be filled with presence, whether that presence is given to loved ones, to work that matters, or to simple rest. Digital clutter is subtler, but just as powerful. The endless notifications, saved articles, unread emails, and social media feeds create an illusion of importance. But most of it is mental junk mail, slipping in and out of awareness, leaving behind a residue of restlessness. You might try a small experiment. For one day, turn off as many notifications as you reasonably can. Notice how often your hand still moves toward your phone. That urge is itself a kind of clutter, a habit of escape. The Buddha taught that craving is not only for pleasures, but for distraction. We reach for something, anything, to avoid feeling naked in the present moment. Clearing digital clutter is not about deleting every app. It is about choosing what you truly want to invite into your mind. Which sources of information nourish your understanding, which simply agitate you, leaving you more anxious, more angry, more scattered. As the outer layers begin to soften, you will start to see the inner clutter more clearly. Emotional clutter is the backlog of unprocessed feeling you carry, the anger you swallowed rather than expressed, the grief you never had time to feel, the disappointments you decided were too small to matter. Over time, these small, unattended experiences accumulate, like unopened letters in the corner of a room. Buddhist practice does not ask you to get rid of these emotions through force. It asks you to meet them with awareness. When anger arises, can you feel it as heat, as tightness, as a story your mind is telling again and again? When sadness appears, can you let it move through you like a weather pattern, instead of trying to hold the sky in place? You may notice patterns. Perhaps you always joke when you feel hurt, or you go silent when you are afraid. These are emotional habits, ways your mind tries to avoid discomfort. They were useful once, perhaps when you were younger and had fewer options. After 30, they can become clutter, blocking more honest, spacious responses. Mental clutter is the constant inner commentary that runs beneath everything else. The second voice that judges how you look, how you speak, how quickly you are aging, how far behind you are. It fills the mind with opinions, comparisons, and imaginary conversations. Buddhist meditation is, in many ways, the art of relating differently to this mental noise. The goal is not to have no thoughts, but to see thoughts as just that, thoughts, not commands or facts. When you catch yourself rehearsing the same worry for the 10th time, you might say quietly, thinking, and then, without aggression, return to what you are actually doing. Washing the dish, walking down the hallway, listening to a friend. Over time, this simple recognition begins to clear a path through the mental undergrowth. The thoughts keep coming, but they no longer bind you so tightly. You discover that you can have a worried thought without becoming a worried person. As you let go of clutter in body, heart, and mind, something unexpected appears in the empty spaces. A small sense of ease, a quiet appreciation for very simple experiences. The way light falls in your kitchen, the feel of your feet on the floor, the sound of your own breath moving in and out. In that quiet, another kind of clutter may become more obvious. The subtle fear of change itself, especially change in your own body and face. Clearing the outer and inner noise prepares you for this deeper encounter. In the next chapter, we will turn toward the fear of aging, not to push it away, but to see whether it, too, can be met with the same spaciousness you are beginning to create. Chapter 4. Letting go of the fear of aging does not begin in the mirror. It begins in the mind that looks into the mirror and panics. By now, you have already loosened your grip on some of the things that once defined you. The need to have life figured out, the need to stay loyal to draining relationships, the need to hold on to every possession, every memory, every opinion. You have made a little space. Into that space, another presence often appears. Subtle at first, then louder with each birthday, each ache, each change in the skin or hair. It is the quiet question underneath many of your choices. Am I running out of time? The Buddha invited his followers to reflect often on aging, not to depress them, but to wake them up to what matters. There is an old story of a young man who came to the Buddha proud of his strength and beauty. "My body is strong," he said. "I will use it to enjoy this life while I can. I have time." The Buddha asked him to look at a nearby tree. When it was a sapling, he said, people walked past without noticing it. When it grew tall and full, they came to sit in its shade. One day, its branches will thin and fall, and its trunk will return to the earth. At what point, he asked, should the tree have been ashamed of itself? Aging, in the Buddhist view, is not a personal failing. It is simply what bodies do, the way water flows downhill and fire burns upward. Yet many of us move through our 30s and beyond as if aging is an enemy arriving too early, a verdict that we did something wrong. This fear is not entirely ours. We inherit it. We live in a culture that worships beginnings and dismisses middles. Advertisements promise eternal youth in bottles and procedures. Stories glorify early success and fresh faces. Social media feeds show carefully curated images of perfection, often saturated with filters that erase every line. The message is repeated in 1,000 small ways. To be young is to be visible. To be older is to be fading. When this belief lodges in the mind, every change in the body becomes threatening. A wrinkle is not just a line of experience across the skin. It becomes a sign of disappearing value. A new ache is not just a signal from the body. It becomes a warning that time is running out. Buddhism offers a different lens. Instead of asking how to stay young, it asks how to be fully alive in each moment as it actually is. Impermanence, one of its central teachings, is often misunderstood as something grim. Everything changes, so nothing lasts. But impermanence is also what makes anything possible at all. Without change, there could be no healing, no growth, no second chances. You would be stuck forever in your worst habits and most painful days. The body you live in now is not the same body you had at 10 or 20. It will not be the same at 50 or 70. In each version, certain doors close and others open. The task is not to fight this, but to meet each stage with respect. Mindfulness of the body is one way to do this. It is different from obsessively checking your reflection or tracking every sign of age. It is closer to the way you would listen to an old friend. You notice with care. You do not demand that they be who they once were. You ask, "How are you now?" You can practice this in small ways. When you wake up, take a moment before reaching for your phone. Feel your feet, your hands, your breathing. Notice any stiffness without immediately judging it. Simply acknowledge, "This is how my body feels today." As you go through the day, your mind may still offer anxious thoughts. You are falling behind. You do not look like you once did. Will others still find you attractive, valuable, worthy? impatience may rise. You might feel the urge to fix, to hide, to rush into drastic measures. Here, a gentle distinction becomes important. Caring for your health is not the same as trying to preserve youth. You can eat well, move your body, and seek medical care from a place of kindness rather than fear. You can exercise because it feels good to inhabit a body that is supported, not because you are trying to reverse the tide of time. When fear is in charge, self-care becomes a desperate project. Every gray hair is an emergency. Every new line is a crisis. When tenderness is in charge, self-care becomes an act of gratitude. You are saying to your body, "Thank you for carrying me all these years. Let me care for you as you are." The Buddha compared the body to a borrowed house. You cannot keep it forever, but while you live in it, you can sweep the floors, mend the roof, and open the windows. You can sit by the door and welcome each day. You do not pretend that the house will never weather, but you also do not abandon it in neglect. There is another shift that helps loosen the fear of aging. It is the movement from appearance to presence. As you grow older, some forms of outward shine may dim. Other forms of radiance become possible. The ability to listen deeply, the steadiness that comes from having survived storms, the quiet confidence of no longer needing to impress every room you walk into. These are not visible in a photograph. They reveal themselves in how others feel around you. Less judged, more at ease, more themselves. From a Buddhist point of view, this kind of presence comes from knowing that you are not only your body, your face, your age. You are also your intentions, your attention, your capacity for kindness. These can grow richer with time, even as the body softens and slows. Each new wrinkle can be a reminder, not just of loss, but of all the days you have lived through. The laughter that etched itself into the corners of your eyes, the tears that softened your gaze, the countless ordinary mornings you have been gifted, though you may have rushed through them without noticing. Letting go of the fear of aging does not mean pretending there is no grief in change. You are allowed to feel sad when you can no longer do what you once did. You are allowed to mourn the passing of a certain kind of beauty or possibility. Grief, in this context, is simply love facing the reality of time. What you are releasing is not your humanity. You are releasing the belief that youth is the only time that matters, that worth is measured in smoothness and speed, that a changing body is a sign of failure. As this belief loosens, something else can rise in its place. A quieter gratitude for the day you are in right now. A deeper curiosity about what wisdom this decade and the next might hold. A willingness to meet your life as it unfolds, instead of forever chasing what has already passed. From here, a new question naturally appears. If my value does not live in youth alone, if my worth cannot be fully found in this body or its timeline, then where am I looking for happiness? In the next chapter, we will explore how often we place that burden on other people, expecting them to make us feel complete. Having begun to soften your relationship to time and to your own aging, you are ready to look at another illusion that quietly shapes adult life. The belief that someone else is supposed to be your source of joy. Chapter 5. Letting go of the fear of aging loosens one of the deepest knots around time and the body. But as that knot loosens, another often becomes visible, quieter, yet just as powerful. It is the belief that someone or something outside of you must finally arrive to make you happy. After 30, this belief becomes more urgent. Perhaps you think a partner should understand you without words by now, or that your children, your friends, your career, or your social status should give you a lasting sense of worth. When they do not, frustration grows. You might not say it out loud, but inside there is a sentence that keeps repeating. If only they would change, then I could be at peace. Buddhism has a simple name for this pattern: craving. Not just craving for food or possessions, but craving for particular emotional experiences held in a particular way. Craving for others to behave in ways that guarantee our comfort. Craving for a permanent state of being loved, approved of, admired. There is a well-known story in the Buddhist tradition of a woman who came to the Buddha in great distress. Her husband had withdrawn from her. Once affectionate, he now seemed distant and cold. She begged the Buddha to teach her a chant or ritual that would bring her husband back to being the way he used to be. The Buddha did not give her a spell. Instead, he asked her a question. When your husband was attentive and kind, where did your happiness come from? She answered, from him, of course. Then the Buddha asked, when he became cold, where did your suffering come from? Again she replied, from him. The Buddha paused and said, as long as your joy and your sorrow belong to someone else, your life will be a storm. People will change as clouds do. If every cloud must stay the same shape for you to feel safe, you will never know calm. He was not dismissing her pain. He was pointing to its deeper cause. Her heart had outsourced its weather to another human being. She had given him the power to decide what she could feel. You may recognize some version of this in your own life. Expecting a partner to always soothe your insecurity. Expecting your parents to finally apologize in the exact way that will heal your childhood. Expecting your friends to anticipate your needs so you never feel lonely. Expecting your job to give you a constant sense of importance. When these expectations go unmet, the mind often moves into blame. If you really loved me, you would. If you were a real friend, you would. If this were the right job, I would never feel doubt. Underneath the blame is a deeper bargain we never said out loud. I will be okay only if you keep giving me what I think I need. Buddhism suggests a different starting point. Happiness that depends on conditions staying exactly as you prefer is fragile by design. People get tired, they get sick, they get distracted, they grow in directions you did not predict. No human being can carry the responsibility of being your permanent emotional shelter. It crushes them, and it keeps you small. This does not mean we should become islands, pretending we do not need anyone. The Buddha lived in community. He encouraged deep friendship. What he warned against was confusing shared joy with dependent happiness. Shared joy is when your contentment is rooted in your own life, and you gladly let others add to it. Dependent happiness is when your contentment collapses the moment someone else pulls away or fails to perform a role you silently assigned them. You can feel the difference. When joy is shared, gratitude is its flavor. I am so glad you are here. When joy is dependent, fear is its flavor. Please do not leave, or I will fall apart. Letting go of expecting others to be your source of happiness begins with a quiet admission. I have been asking you to carry what is actually mine: my sense of worth, my sense of enough, my sense of being whole. This admission is not self-blame. It is self-responsibility. It is the moment you start to reclaim your life from the shifting moods and choices of other people. In practice, this shift begins very simply. The next time you notice resentment rising because someone is not giving you what you want, pause and ask, what am I hoping they will make me feel? Safe, seen, valued, chosen. Do not rush past this question. Let the answer be clear and honest. Then, gently add a second question. Is there any way I can offer even a small taste of that feeling to myself right now? If you are longing to be seen, you might sit quietly and name what you are experiencing in this moment without judgment. My chest feels tight. I am disappointed. I want comfort. In that simple act of inward attention, you are seeing yourself. If you are longing to feel valued, you might write down one way you eased someone else's burden this week, or one challenge you have walked through in the last year. You are acknowledging your own effort rather than waiting for praise. If you are longing to feel chosen, you might choose yourself in a small, concrete way, saying no to a request that depletes you, saying yes to a walk instead of another hour of scrolling. With each choice, you are no longer completely at the mercy of who calls, texts, or remembers you. Over time, these small acts accumulate into something profound. A steady sense that you are basically all right, even when others are distracted, even when plans fall through, even when affection is not obvious. From this steadier ground, relationships become less about filling a hole and more about sharing overflowing cups. Then, love can relax. Your partner no longer has to be your therapist, your parent, and your constant reassurance provider. Your friends no longer have to rescue you from every difficult emotion. Your status no longer has to prove your value. People are free to be what they actually are: imperfect, changing, sometimes available, sometimes not. And you are free to enjoy them without gripping so tightly. Letting go of this expectation does not make life dull. It makes it more intimate. You begin to meet others as they are, and yourself as you are, without so many invisible contracts. From this inner stability, another habit starts to loosen its hold. The habit of turning outward and measuring your life against others, especially those who seem to have more time, more beauty, more success. In the next chapter, we will look directly at this reflex to compare yourself to the young and explore how Buddhist wisdom can help you step out of that exhausting race. Chapter 6. Let go of comparing yourself to the young. By now in this journey, you have already begun to turn inward. You have loosened your grip on expectations of others, and you have tasted, even if briefly, the steadiness that comes from sourcing contentment from within. From this place, a particular kind of suffering becomes easier to see clearly. It often appears quietly, in a glance at someone else, in a number on a screen, in the quick sting of envy you barely admit to yourself. It is the suffering of comparison, especially comparison with the young. In a culture that worships early success and smooth faces, you are constantly invited to measure yourself against people 10 or 20 years younger. Their bodies, their careers, their milestones become an unspoken checklist against which your own life is judged, usually unfavorably. Why am I not as far along as they are? I looked better at their age. What happened? If I had known then what I know now, my life would be different. These thoughts do not simply float by. They land, they wound, and they create a subtle but constant sense of being behind, of having missed something essential. Buddhism begins its response not by arguing with comparison, but by asking a deeper question. Who exactly is being compared? When the Buddha taught that there is no fixed self, he was not denying your existence. He was pointing to the way what you call I is in constant motion, made of conditions that are always changing. Body, moods, memories, roles, opinions, all of these come and go. There is no solid, unchanging person inside you that can be lined up neatly next to someone else and declared better or worse. Comparison assumes that such solid selves exist. It imagines two fixed objects on a shelf, one newer, one older, and then declares the newer one more valuable. But a human life is not an object. It is a stream. Consider two rivers. One is young, narrow, fast, rushing over bright stones. The other is wide, slower, with deep currents and quiet inlets. Would you say the mountain stream is better than the broad river, or that the river is better than the stream? You cannot compare them in any meaningful way, because each flows through different land, under different weather, fed by different sources. They are simply themselves. In the same way, the life of a 23-year-old and the life of a 47-year-old cannot be laid side by side as if they had the same starting line, the same conditions, the same inner landscape. Yet the mind tries to do this all the time. It forgets the countless causes that shaped your path and the paths of others. From a Buddhist view, when you compare, you are not seeing the other person. You are seeing a mental image, a story you wrote from fragments. The young colleague with the impressive job does not appear in your mind along with the arguments they had, the loneliness they feel, the private fears about their future. The younger body at the gym does not come packaged with the insecurity that lives inside it. You see only a highlight, then measure your whole being against that sliver. This is why comparison feels so painful. You are putting a complete, complex human life up against a thin, polished image and declaring yourself the loser. Letting go of this habit does not mean pretending you never notice age or achievement. It means learning to see comparison as an activity of the mind, not a verdict on your worth. You can begin very simply. The next time you feel the stab of comparison, pause. Without scolding yourself, quietly label what is happening. Comparing. Nothing more. Not, I am failing. Not, I am old. Just comparing. This small act of naming creates a little space. In that space, you can remember what you have already begun to learn in this book. Your value does not arise from how well you match an outer picture. It arises from the sincerity with which you live your own path. Still, the world you live in constantly feeds comparison, especially through the glowing rectangles you carry in your pocket. Social media is designed to offer up younger faces, earlier successes, tightened and edited lives. Every scroll can become a silent exam you are sure you are failing. Here, practical boundaries are not a sign of weakness. They are a form of compassion. Notice which platforms and which people trigger the sharpest comparisons. You might choose to unfollow certain accounts, to take regular breaks, or to limit your time online to particular hours. You are not running away from reality. You are choosing which mental seeds to water. When you are in professional or social settings, the same mindfulness can apply. You may meet someone younger who has reached a position you once dreamed of, or whose life seems, from the outside, cleaner and more linear than your own. Rather than silently comparing timelines, you can shift the focus from competition to curiosity. What can I genuinely appreciate about this person? What do our different paths allow us to bring to this moment? Suddenly, instead of shrinking in their presence, you may notice what your years have given you. Perhaps you offer steadiness in a crisis, or a broader view of what truly matters, or the ability to sit with discomfort without fleeing. These are fruits of time that no one can display in a photograph. Another helpful practice is to turn comparison into blessing. When you notice a younger person radiant with health or enthusiasm, mentally say, "May you use your strength wisely. May you suffer less than I did. May your path be kind." In that moment, envy softens into goodwill. You are no longer battling youth, you are wishing it well. And in doing so, you honor your own age, because it is your experience that lets you offer such a blessing. Bit by bit, you redirect attention away from what others appear to have and toward what is actually available in your own life, here and now. You might ask, what is possible in this season of my life that was not possible before? Perhaps you have more honesty in your relationships, more freedom to choose how you spend your time, more clarity about what is worth your energy. These are not consolation prizes. They are real, present possibilities that comparison makes you overlook. As you loosen the habit of measuring yourself against the young, another layer of comparison quietly rises to the surface. Not comparison with other people, but comparison with your own past. Not, why am I not like them, but why am I no longer who I used to be? To walk more freely, you will need to turn toward this inner comparison as well, the one that shows up as regret and self-judgment. That is the work of the next chapter. Chapter 7. Let go of regret and offer yourself forgiveness. By the time you reach your 30s and beyond, your life is no longer just a set of possibilities. It is also a record. Jobs you took and did not take, people you loved and hurt, promises you made and broke. The mind can turn this record into a courtroom where you sit as both the accused and the judge, sentencing yourself again and again for what cannot be changed. In Buddhism, this ongoing trial is seen as another form of attachment, not to a person or an object, but to an old version of yourself. Regret says, I am the one who failed. I am the one who wasted years. I am the one who cannot be trusted again. It freezes you at the worst moment of your past and calls that the whole story. Yet every Buddhist teaching about the mind points in the opposite direction. The self is not a fixed object. It is a flow of causes and conditions, habits and choices, changing from moment to moment. The version of you who made a painful mistake 10 years ago does not exist anymore. Only the memory and the judgment remain, and those can be worked with. There is an old story of a monk who carried a secret shame. Before he ordained, He had been quick to anger, and in one violent outburst, he badly injured a man. Years later, he had devoted himself to meditation and service. But in the quiet of the night, the scene would replay in his mind. He saw the blood, the terror, the regret. One day, he went to his teacher and confessed. "I do not deserve this robe," he said. "I am still that man." The teacher listened and asked a simple question. "Are you striking him now?" "No, of course not," the monk answered. Then the teacher said, "The wound you made in his body has long since healed or scarred. But you strike your own heart every day. Is that helping him? Is that helping anyone?" This is the key distinction between healthy remorse and toxic guilt. Healthy remorse says, "I see clearly that what I did caused harm. Let me learn from this. Let me repair what I can." Toxic guilt says, "I am the harm. I am the mistake. Let me keep punishing myself as if pain alone could turn back time." Remorse is part of compassion. When you see the pain you caused, your heart becomes more sensitive and wise. But when remorse hardens into a permanent identity, it stops being helpful. It blocks you from offering anything good to the world now. Buddhism invites you to look at the past through the lens of causes and conditions. This is not an excuse. It is an explanation that allows understanding to grow where self-hatred once stood. Consider a decision you regret. Perhaps you stayed in a job you hated because you were terrified of financial instability. Perhaps you betrayed a partner because you were desperate for validation. Perhaps you did not stand up for yourself or for someone else when it mattered. Instead of simply labeling yourself a coward or a selfish person, ask, what were the conditions then? What did I know or not know? What fears were driving me? What support did I have or not have? What options did I believe were available to me? When you look honestly, you see that each action arose from a web of influences: your upbringing, your culture, your level of emotional skill at the time, your stress, your loneliness, your unhealed wounds. Seeing these conditions does not erase responsibility, but it shifts the story from "I am rotten at the core" to "I acted unskillfully from the limited awareness I had." From a Buddhist view, this shift is where transformation begins. When you stop making your past actions your permanent identity, you become capable of making different choices now. You can recognize a pattern as a pattern, not as your destiny. There is a simple reflection you can try. Bring to mind something you regret. Notice the familiar surge of shame or heaviness. Then, quietly say to yourself, "I was doing the best I could with the awareness and resources I had." If that sentence feels false, adjust it. "I was doing what I knew how to do," or "I did not yet know another way." Pause and notice what happens. Very often, another truth appears alongside the regret. Maybe you see how lost you felt, how frightened you were of being abandoned or failing. You start to feel not just guilty toward others, but compassion toward the younger you who was in so much confusion. Forgiving yourself does not mean declaring that everything you did was fine. It means you are willing to stop adding fresh layers of suffering on top of what has already occurred. In Buddhism, forgiveness is not a grand announcement. It is a daily decision to put down the whip. Sometimes that forgiveness includes making amends where possible. You might apologize to someone you hurt, even years later, without demanding their forgiveness in return. You might repay a debt or speak honestly about what you did. But even when amends are not possible, the inner work remains. You can commit that the pain you carry will become a reason to be more gentle with others, not more distant and guarded. Another useful question is, what has this regret taught me that could help someone else? Maybe your broken marriage has made you deeply patient with friends in relationship turmoil. Maybe your years of overspending and denial have given you insight that can support others struggling with money shame. When you allow regret to open your heart instead of close it, the past becomes a source of wisdom. Each moment, Buddhism says, is fresh. Not because the past never happened, but because the present is not entirely determined by it. The habit of regret whispers, "It is already ruined. There is no point in trying now." But that is not a fact. It is a thought. And like every thought, it appears and disappears in awareness. You do not have to build your life around it. As you let go of regret, you begin to see something startling. Much of the heaviness you have been carrying is tied to a larger story. I missed my chance. My best possibilities are gone. I am too late. In the next chapter, we will turn directly toward that story. We will look at the fear that time has run out and discover what becomes possible when you stop believing that your life is already over while you are still living it. Chapter 8. Let go of the lie that it is too late. There is a quiet sentence that begins to whisper more loudly after 30. It is too late. It is too late to start again. Too late to change careers. Too late to fall in love differently. Too late to learn an instrument, heal a wound, forgive yourself, or live in a way that feels honest. Too late to become someone new. We usually do not say this out loud. It appears in small choices. You feel a pull to sign up for a class, and then a heavier thought arrives. People start this in their 20s. It is too late. You want to have a difficult conversation with someone you hurt years ago, and the same thought stands in the doorway. Too much time has passed. Why bother now? From a Buddhist perspective, this sentence rests on a misunderstanding of time itself. We think of time as a straight line stretching behind and ahead. We imagine our life like a race, with milestones we are supposed to hit by certain ages. By 30, I should have done this. By 40, I should be there. By 50, it is over if I have not. Buddhism invites a different vision. Instead of miles on a road, it speaks of moments. This breath, this thought, this choice. The Buddha did not talk much about a future self 10 years from now. He spoke instead of the quality of awareness in this moment, and how that awareness shapes the next moment. The past is conditions and causes that have ripened into the present. The future will ripen out of what you plant now. In that light, it is never too late to begin, because you only ever begin from now. There is an old story of a monk who came to the Buddha in great distress. He said, "I have wasted so many years chasing pleasure and status. Now I am old. What is the point of practicing?" Is it not too late for me? The Buddha asked him, "When is the best time to plant a tree?" The monk replied, "When it is young, of course." The Buddha nodded. "And when is the second best time?" The monk was puzzled. "I do not know." The Buddha said, "Now." We often treat our own lives as if the only meaningful change is the tree planted at the perfect time in the perfect soil. Anything less feels like failure. But the earth does not complain when a seed is planted late in the season. It simply receives it and does what it can given the conditions. Your life is no different. When you believe it is too late, you are not seeing the present clearly. You are seeing it through the fog of comparison and regret, the very habits you have been loosening in the previous chapters. The lie of being out of time is built out of 3 materials: memory of the past, fantasy of what should have been, fear of how much time is left. Buddhist practice offers another starting point. Instead of asking, "How much time is left?" it asks, "What is alive in me now?" After 30, many external doors may indeed have closed. Some careers require early training. Some paths cannot be rewound. Certain relationships have ended. The body may not do what it did at 20. Letting go of the lie that it is too late does not mean pretending those realities do not exist. It means shifting your attention from the doors that are gone to the doors that are here. Perhaps you will not be a concert pianist, but you can still sit at a piano and let your hands explore sound. It is not too late to experience the joy of music. Perhaps you will not have children in the way you once imagined. It is not too late to offer guidance, care, and love to younger people in your life. Perhaps you will not erase past harm. It is not too late to apologize, to act differently, to become a gentler presence for those around you. Late does not mean meaningless. Late does not mean small. The mind that believes it is too late is usually hunting for grand reinvention. It imagines a life so transformed that the old one disappears. That fantasy is just another form of striving, another way of refusing the life that is actually here. Buddhism suggests a humbler, kinder scale. Do not ask, "Is it too late to change my whole life?" Ask instead, "Is it possible to make one honest move in the direction of truth today?" One kinder choice, one real conversation, one small act of courage. A woman in her 50s once told me that she had spent decades waiting for the right moment to leave a job that quietly deadened her. By the time she admitted the truth, her body was tired, her confidence thin. The voice in her head was loud. "You missed your chance. This is who you are. Stay where you are." Instead of trying to overhaul everything, she made a single promise to herself. "Every day, I will take one small step out of the lie." Some days, the step was updating a resume. Other days, it was simply sitting for 10 minutes to feel her fear and not turn away. 1 year later, she was in a new role, not glamorous, but aligned with her values. She said, "The job matters, but the real change is this. I no longer tell myself that my life is already decided." The shift happened not in one dramatic leap, but in a steady refusal to believe the sentence, "It is too late." As you have moved through this book, you have loosened your grip on old identities, harmful relationships, clutter, fear of aging, false sources of happiness, comparison, and regret. Each letting go has quietly prepared you for this final release. Because the story that it is too late is really a summary of all the others. It says, I am who I am. I am tied to these people, this stuff, this fear, these expectations, these comparisons, these mistakes. Nothing can truly change. You have already begun to see that this is not true. Letting go of this last lie does not require you to know what comes next. You do not need a 5-year plan. You do not need heroic discipline. You only need the willingness to treat this moment as living, not leftover. Right now, you can place one seed in the soil of your life. A phone call you have avoided. A boundary you have postponed. A creative impulse you have dismissed. A habit of self-criticism you are ready to question. Plant it, not because you are sure it will grow into something impressive, but because you understand that planting itself is a form of freedom. In the end, the deepest Buddhist teaching on time is simple. The only moment you can ever live is now. Not the age you think you should have changed. Not the future you imagine is already ruined. Just this breath, this choice, this step. As you set down the weight of it is too late, your life does not suddenly become easy or perfect, but it becomes available. You can meet each day not as a sentence already written, but as a page that appears line by line, word by word, as you show up. The 8 truths in this book are not tasks to complete and then forget. They are invitations, ways of loosening your grip so that life can move again. In the next and final reflection, we will gather these invitations together and look at how to live them, not just understand them. You will be invited to step into the rest of your life as an ongoing practice of release, discovery, and quiet courage.